Hey everybody, it's Elida Estate, and today let's brew our Panama Elida Estate anaerobic processed geisha. This is an update for the latest pre-order of this Panama geisha, which is already sold out almost immediately. But for those of you who made the right choice and got some of this coffee, this is the recipe for you. Slight variation based on the last recipe because this coffee drains a little bit more quickly and needs a little bit more work to get that full extraction. So our recipe today, we are going to brew with the Elida Wave 185. I've got the glass model here because it flows more quickly, but you'll get similar results with the ceramic and the stainless steel. I just like the glass version for this coffee because that speed gives us really delicate flavors and a little bit less body in that. We have, anaerobic geisha from Elida Estate, their Elida Estate geisha. Anaerobic slow-dried, long, slow fermentation from a geisha that already has tons of sugar in there. Gives us a really complex coffee and a flavor profile that will be oddly familiar to those that tried the last version of this coffee. It is almost exactly the same, except this coffee is much cleaner, be that either through their very clean processing combined with our greater knowledge of how to roast this coffee. We have a really clean, sweet, complex coffee. We are going to be using 10 grams ground medium fine. I ground this on 19 clicks on the Comandante C40, and we'll be brewing at a 1:16 ratio. We'll be using 160 grams of 205-degree Fahrenheit water, and let's go ahead and wet that paper filter. Just saturate everything. I like to go until that paper smell starts to dissipate. And there we go. Let that drip out. I'm going to dump any water from the bottom of that Elida. Always be sure to dump your preheat water. Let's dose our coffee. So small recipe, partially because, we're selling this coffee in pretty small amounts, but also I really love how much flavor we can get out of small amounts of coffee. By using this tiny amount of coffee in this Elida Wave, we don't have a lot of depth in that brew bed, which means we have a lot of control over that amount of coffee, and we're gonna get more body, and it allows us to grind much more finely than we traditionally would for a Elida Wave. Let's tare our scale. My water is set to 205 degrees Fahrenheit, so hotter than our last offering, because we need to work a little bit harder to get these complex flavors out of here. And I'm gonna start my timer. I'm gonna bloom 30 grams. Gently wet all the coffee. And I'm gonna let this rest for 30 seconds. I'm gonna pour another 30 grams. I'm gonna let this bloom for 45 seconds. Longer bloom helps us completely degas this dense coffee. And then at 45, another 30 grams, bringing us up to 60. This is kind of like a double bloom. I really just think of the double pour as your first pulse. So here at 45 seconds, I'm gonna punch it with 30 grams. We're gonna be up to 60. And drop. It's gonna be pretty quick. There we go. Now I'm gonna let this drain almost all the way through. Around a minute and 15 seconds is when I'm gonna hit my next pour, bringing this up to 110 grams total. So 50 gram pulse coming up. Coming up here real quick. And here it goes. Spiral pours each time, trying to agitate, but also just touch all of our coffee. And I'm gonna let this go until a minute and 40 seconds, and then finish this off to 160 grams total. All in all, this coffee is actually really easy to brew. If you either don't have a Elida 185, glass model, whatever it may be, this coffee is going to taste good in a variety of brew methods. What I would recommend is grinding more finely than you normally do and using hotter water than you normally do. Yeah, there we go. I expect a drain time of around 2.5 to 2 minutes and 40 seconds. My first recipe with this was a little bit too coarse. My water was too cool. It was still really heavy in the texture, but it was just a little bit too bright for my liking. I knew I could get more body and sweetness from this coffee, so we ground more fine. We spread that ratio a little bit to make it not quite so strong, and raised the temperature of that water to give us a little bit more extraction and hopefully a little bit more sweetness, and that's what we achieved. So when we brew too quickly, we are going to taste really bright apple. We're going to get just a little bit of saline salt in there, and it's still gonna be pretty strong. If we let it drain too long, it's gonna be a little bit too floral. It's gonna taste a little bit more like potpourri or perfumed, but when we are balanced, this coffee is outstanding. The aroma, super unreal. Just given this, I would not have guessed this was anaerobic because it's very clean. Like I said, when we dial this coffee in, you're going to taste violet candy, watermelon, and raspberry jam. So very confectionery, very nice and sweet. I'm actually gonna enjoy this cup myself. It smells really nice, and I'm gonna save the rest for Jason behind the camera. Serve and enjoy.